Welcome to Does It Matter by Brainy Ballers, where we dissect the game with cutting-edge analytics to give you the upper hand. We analyze everything from hand sizes to average depth of targets to uncover hidden trends that no one else sees. Say goodbye to guesswork and hello to data-driven domination. Because here at Brainy Ballers, we don't just watch the game, we understand it. So get ready, it's podcast time.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling a pretty common debate, especially if you're into fantasy football. Does height really matter for NFL tight ends?
Yeah, and our source for this is a really detailed research paper. They properly dug into the data sets to see if height actually predicts fantasy success. It's all about the numbers here.
Right. And our goal today is to unpack that for you, the methods, the kind of surprising findings, and what it all means, basically giving you the quick version of this whole height debate.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We need to start with how they did it. What was the core methodology? How deep did they go?
Well, it was pretty thorough, actually. They strictly used NFL Combine numbers, and then they looked at the top 50 fantasy football PPR finishers, points per reception, every season, going back to 2003.
Okay, PPR since '03.
Exactly. So they define the bottom 10 as the guys ranking 41st to 50th each year. Gives you that clear benchmark.
Gotcha. And when they first just, crunched those initial numbers, look at the averages, it didn't really show anything dramatic. Surprisingly flat. You might have expected, the top guys to be way taller on average, but it wasn't that clear-cut at all from just the averages.
That first pass was kind of a non-result. Where did they go from there to find this sweet spot idea?
Yeah, exactly. So they had to dig deeper. They started comparing specific height ranges, looking at the percentage of players within certain heights in that bottom 10 group versus the top 10 group.
Comparing the extremes.
Right. So the baseline, they took all those bottom 10 finishers since 2003, 204 players in total, and they found that 77% of them, that's 157 guys, were between 6'3" and 1/8 inches. And 6'6" and 7/8 inches tall.
Do you want to start dominating your drafts? At BrainyBallers.com, we've researched every metric under the sun for you to find which ones are best linked to fantasy points. You can access hundreds of metrics to sharpen your scouting abilities so you know which metrics matter and which are just noise. Stop guessing on which thresholds to look for within each metric. Big numbers can be misleading or irrelevant. Our Ultimate Athlete Blueprints reveal essential scouting metrics, their importance, and benchmarks within each metric that help predict a player's probability of being a success or bust. Elevate your scouting ability with Brainy Ballers' Ultimate Athlete Blueprints today. Click the link in the description. Now back to the show.
Okay, so that's the common range for the lower performers.
That's the baseline. Now, here's where it gets interesting. They looked at the top 10 finishers, 202 of them over the years. And within that exact same height range, 89.6% of the top guys fell into it. That's 181 players.
Wow. Okay, 89.6% versus 77%? That's a noticeable jump.
It is. It's a 12.6% increase compared to the baseline. That range was where the top producers were more likely to be found.
Right, the top producing height. But they narrowed it down even more, didn't they, to this optimal sweet spot?
They did. They sort of tweaked the edges in that range, played with the upper and lower limits a bit, and through that fine-tuning, they landed on this optimal sweet spot. 6'3" and 1/4 inch, up to 6'6" and 1/4.
So a slightly tighter range.
Exactly. And that specific range, it shows up 17.0% more often in the top 10 group compared to the bottom 10. That's a pretty significant concentration.
17%. But here's the twist I read about. Despite finding this sweet spot, the overall statistics were less convincing.
Yeah, this is what's really fascinating. They ran the standard statistical test, regression analysis, looking for a direct correlation across all the data. And the Pearson value, which measures that linear relationship, it came out at just 0.061.
0.061, that sounds low.
It's very low. There's no significant linear correlation. Just for context, they mentioned running back draft capital. Something we know matters had a Pearson of negative 0.234. That shows a much, much stronger link, even if it's inverse.
Okay, so the sweet spot exists for the top guys, but height isn't a strong predictor across the board. So what else did they find that maybe complicates this?
Yeah, there was another twist. The decadal differences. They noticed something changing over time. They found a pretty noticeable decrease, 22.9%, in how often players within that optimal sweet spot range showed up in the top 10 in the most recent decades compared to the earlier ones, like back in the 2000s.
Wait, so the sweet spot is becoming less relevant over time.
It seems that way. The trend suggests maybe, while height was perhaps more key historically, the modern game's focus on speed, route running, versatility, maybe that's shifting things for tight ends. Pure height might not be the edge it once was on its own.
That makes sense. The game is evolving. So wrapping this all up, what's the big takeaway for someone trying to figure out if height matters?
Look, the research definitely found that sweet spot, right? But crucially, the overall statistical link to fantasy points was what the paper called a near miss, meaning it's not a consistent predictor for all tight ends. It's a common trait among the best, but not the single reason they're successful. So the clear advice is, don't just use height by itself when you're scouting or drafting tight ends. It's one piece, but maybe a smaller piece than we thought, especially now.
Right. And that leaves us with a final thought for you to chew on. Given these findings, especially that decadal shift suggesting height's influence might be waning, what else could be driving tight end success today? Definitely something to think about.